Hi, this is Cheryl St.Pierre of Majestic Wire Artworks. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these fancy statement earrings. Now, I'm calling them statement earrings because of the length. They are, with ear wires, about 3¼ inches long. And you can make a smaller version, but it'll only shorten it about ½ inch. But for some people, that ½ inch, it means a lot. So you can make these in 2 different sizes. I'm showing you in the larger size. What I've used here is 10mm beads, 8mm beads, and 6mm beads. And to make the smaller version, you would use 8mm, 6mm, and 4mm. And so what we have here in this part, we've also got the 8mm and 6mm beads, and for the smaller version you would use the 6mm and 4mm, and the bicones would stay the same in both pairs of earrings. We've got 4mm bicones, and I've got a clear. I'm using clear today in the earrings I'm making, as well as this pair. That is your choice what color you would use with whichever beads you are using. So I've got, these are purple, and the earrings today we're going to be using the Beebeecraft black stone beads. They look like black onyx to me. I would say they are black onyx, but that's for you to decide. Some people, when they're not sure if it's onyx or agate, they write black stone, and I'm thinking that's what they did. And you know what? Onyx and black agate are pretty much the same stone. If you Google it and research, if the makeup of the stone is virtually the same, so it's almost impossible to tell. And they're both all semi-precious stones. So if you're worried about misrepresenting yourself, just write black stone, black semi-precious stone. But these are so shiny, I would say black onyx. So anyways, what you're going to need for wire is you're going to, for the fancy wire work, you're going to need 2 12-inch pieces of 20 gauge dead soft copper's what I'm using. And for the head pins that we're making, you're going to need 6 5½ inches of 20 gauge wire. You can use scrap for that if you've got 5½ inch pieces of scraps. And you're going to need your ear wires, and you're going to need 10 4mm accenting bicones. I'm using clear with a silver AB coating on them for for these ones and the ones I'm making today. So, but that's your choice. You can do whatever accenting bicones you want to do. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to get started with making the first head pin. So you're going to take one of your 5½ inch pieces of 20 gauge wire, and for those people that require metric, I will have all the measurements in the description, and the supply list and description as well. So the first thing I want you to do, and you don't really need your ruler for this, but you can, is bend it about ½ inch from the end. Okay, and then we're actually just guesstimate the ½ inch. That's what I did, really. And then we're gonna make it have a 45-degree sharp angle, and then we're gonna trim it back. And this is because we're gonna be making the little spirals at the end of the head pins, and we want them all the same size. So we're gonna go back to metric, and we're gonna put your long wire on a marker of 1 centimeter, and it doesn't matter, you know, all centimeters are the same. So then you're going to trim it exactly at 1 centimeter, and just go there, and then do all 6 of them. Have all 6 of them ready at this point, and you can pause now and do that part. Okay, I'm going on to the next part, and I'm making the spiral at the end of the head pin. And you see, it's like this, If you're left-handed, you would want it like this, just the opposite, and work your way. You're rounding it into the wire, so up and around. So you're going to make your bud of your spiral, crimp it in like that, and then turn it. And it's hard to grip it sometimes. And it's going to flatten the wire, and you know what? That look is great, and that's unavoidable. So if it flattens your wire, don't worry about it, because it's going to do that for everyone. It's impossible not to. So the next step, you see, because we used the wire, I hope I didn't do that out of screen. I wasn't checking. We're going to straighten and work harden this wire here, because it's going to make the head pin stronger and won't bend as easily. And I really want you to use either a flat nose plier or a chain nose pliers for this. I don't have flat nose pliers on the list of supplies because I never use them. And I'm actually smacking it, and the beads are going to cover any marring it may make, but I am work hardening it this way. Okay, just the bottom part next to the end of the head pin. And the next thing is you're going to put the beads on. So you're going to take your 10mm bead, and you're going to make 2 head pins with 10mm beads and an 8mm bead. Oh, come on, hold, there you are. Okay, and then for the large ones, we're going to use 2 bicones. And now we're going to make just a regular loop. But what I want to point out is we want to be consistent with our dangles. So you need to have a consistent wrap. I like to have it look like there's 4 wraps. So I go a little bit larger on this. I'm pushing my beads down so my measurement is the same. And I'm trying to remember where I am here. And I'm like 3/4 up my round nose pliers this way. And so I'm going to try to do that for all of mine. And then I bend it away from me like that. And then the loop, we need a larger loop because for the earrings, you have 2 wires that it's going around there. So you want a larger loop, and you want all of them to have the same loop. So I'm using the center of my round nose pliers. That's the size of loop I'm making. And I'm wrapping it around like that. And I want my loop to be nice looking like that. And wrapping it around. And actually the front is going to be on this side, the back end of my pliers. And you see how it has 4, it looks like 4 wraps. It really, this side looks like 3, that side looks like 4. I want the front of it is going to look like it's 4. And then I'm going to snip this back as close as I can at the side. And remember, the loop is going this way on your earrings. And now I'm going to crimp it in, and I'm going to straighten it all out, doing the checks of a loop. and it keeps getting away on you, and that's just what it does because it flips around. And I'm cinching up the wraps to look neater. Sometimes it does that, sometimes you don't need to do that. And straightening it out. Okay, and there it is. There's one drop. So what you're going to do, as I made my drops ahead of time to make this faster for the video, you need to have 2 drops made with the 10mm and 8mm, and 4 drops made. Oh, and the 10mm, 8mm has 2 bicones. The smaller drops have 8mm and 6mm beads and 1 bicone. So you need 4 of those and 2 of the larger ones. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and make those. It might take you a bit of time to do this all, but it's all in the prep work. Okay, so the next step is to take your 12-inch piece of 20 gauge wire, and you can take both of them at the same time if you want, or you can do them one at a time. For this part, we want to measure 5 inches. Okay, so get your 5 inches and give it a bend. Okay, so that's where we're going to make our loop, top loop for our earrings. So the beads are going to go on the shorter part. You're going to make the use the longer part of your wire for making the loop. So I've got the shorter part down in my hand, and I'm fighting with my table here because this is a longer piece of wire. Now this, I'm going to use my standard size of loop that I do for the top of an earring. It doesn't need to be larger because it's just hanging on the ear wire. Okay, making my one, you're going to be making a regular loop where you have the wire on this side, and then because we're doing mirroring in these earrings, the other one's going to have the backwards loop. So, and I'm wrapping 4 times for this as well. And this is going to be the front, so that's what's going to have the 4 wraps, and we want it to come to the left of the front. Okay, now I'm just doing my checks, straightening it out. Okay, and you don't want to work hard on this wire too much, so you got to be careful how much you bend it, because that's where we're doing the fancy wire work. Okay, so that one's ready, and what we will do, because we're mirroring, we're going to do both of them at the same time. We're going to alternate with the different steps. So now I've got my other piece of wire. I've got the shorter end in my hand and the longer end at the top to make the loop. And this time we're making the backwards loop. And this time we're making the wire go to the right, which feels awkward. And wrap it 4 times. And I flipped it around so that the front would be there and you could see 4 wraps. Okay, there's 4. Cinching it up because it's spread apart on me. I'm going to straighten it out. We want this wire on the right hand side this time. There we go. Okay, so the next step is to make my bounce off loop on top that I do so often. And what I mean by that is, look at, if you see this little loop on top that's in front of the wraps. Okay, so the, whoops, sorry, move my camera. Okay, the next thing we're going to do are the top loops, like I had said, and we want to make the loop, the measurement, to be the top of the 4 wraps, and that'll help us make the loop pretty much the same size. So that's what we want. Okay, so like that. And then we're going the opposite way with the other one. And that should help them be the same size. And as you can see, they are almost identical. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do, if yours are not the same size, whichever one's larger, you tighten it up to be smaller to match the other one, because it's easier to make one smaller than it is to make one larger. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our beads on. So I've got 6mm, and this is going to go on the the straight piece. And then we want an 8mm. And then another 6mm. Okay, and then we want to grab a bicone and put it on the side wire. So you're going to have to hold it upside down at this point. I'm going to move my items away out of view. Okay, and the wire here is pushing up the beads. We want to make sure they're down all the way. I'm going to lift up this wire a little bit so it doesn't push them. There we go. Now it's going to sit. So all I did was move this wire up a little bit to make room for the beads. Okay, and now we're going to bend this round like this. And we don't want to bend the beads, but it's going to happen, and we'll have to straighten it out later. And we want to make a loop approximately right between the bottom 2 beads. It looks like the top 2 here, but those are actually the bottom beads. So I'm going to make a loop right there. And then it looks like this. So it kind of looks, oh, I lost a bead. And that's going to happen to you too. Well, maybe not, but it's a good possibility. It happens to me a lot. Okay, so I'm going to again straighten these beads out, and we want to make it look pretty. We're gonna push those beads tight, and then we want the wire the way we want it to look. And we're going to wrap around this wire once. So this is the top, and you can see it arced, and we're going to straighten that out, make it look good. So that's the top, this is the bottom, and that's the front. We're going to make sure it all sits flat. And we're going to have this wire coming out the opposite wire, opposite of the swirls and the bicone. Okay, so that's how you do that. Now let's do the opposite one. So I'm going to put the 3 beads on. I'm going to lift this up a little bit, not much, just a little. Okay, and put my bicone on the side wire. Now the reason I'm putting the bicone on, just going to explain that, is because this length is so long. I just wanted a little bit of a decoration just to fill it up, and then it just adds a nice little touch. Okay, so I've got it upside down. Now, when you're doing the opposite one, it feels tricky. So you do what you got to do in order to try and make them consistent. And I want that loop to be between the 2 beads. Okay, like that. And we want it similar in size. So I want it a little bit tighter. About there, I'd say. I'm going to hold the beads straight and tight against the top. And now I've got it like this, and I want to make sure that they're fairly consistent in shape. So what I'm talking about is the space here. Okay. About there. And do my 1 wrap around. Okay, so that's the front. And they look pretty consistent. Minor differences are to be expected. So you see, I have a minor difference. This is a little bit longer than it is there, but we can't avoid things like that. Now, as you can see, there's a bit of space between the beads. I'm going to cinch that up. I'm going to straighten out the beads. They'll be bending again, but we can always do the adjustments as we go. Okay, so the next step is whichever direction your side wire is, you want this, your other wire, to match it. And then we're going to make, because it's going that way, we're going to make a little loop at the base of the beads here to start our double circle thing. Here, I'll show you here. The inside little loop there, that's the next step. So we're facing to the right, and we're going to make the loop come this way. Just a little loop. And, you know, they go a little bit wonky, and that's okay. That's unavoidable. And we're going to do the same with the other side now. So this wire, we're to the left this time. And we're going to try and make that loop similar in shape and size. And that one turned out, I wish they would be consistent. See how this one's got the space there and this one doesn't? But I wish they'd all turn out like that, but they don't, even for me. Okay. And I cinched that up again because it did come down. Straighten the beads. There. Now the next step is to make, and this is the hardest part, and it can take practice. And, you know, sometimes they don't work out for me either. And then I just cut the wire off and start all over again. And that's to be expected, ladies. Well, I shouldn't say ladies, because some of our great wire wrappers are men too. Okay, so you want it to be like this. You want to come up in here, and you want to have it to be as close to a circle as you can. Sometimes you gotta bend the wire a little bit more and fidget with it to make it round. Okay, and now I want to try and make a similar size. So now not only are we trying to make it round, but we're trying to make it a matching size. Okay. Actually, the matching size isn't so hard because once you got it round, it's easy enough to adjust your circle. So, okay, this one's actually looking a little bit smaller, but I want to round it up a little bit more. And now it's probably going to be bigger, and it is. So it's just playing with it until they match. Okay. And now I think they're pretty bang on. Okay. So the next step, before we do anything else, we're going to make everything straight, frontward. Just there. Okay, so now I think they look pretty good. Now you're going to take your drops and you're going to start with, we gotta, if they're crooked, straighten them out. I thought I had done that, but I must have bent them. Okay, so they're going to be hanging this way. You want to have the, well, I want to have the 4 wraps as the front. See, this is the back and I can see the end. I am trying not to see the ends. And so in order to get it, I'm turning it backwards so I do see the end. And it's as I put it on both wires and do this, it flips around. So there's one. Now I want the larger drop. The back end front, and then it turns around and there. Okay, I'm going to do the same with the other earring. Then you want to double check as you put them on that you do have them front ways, the front ways. There. Okay. So the next step is to trim these wires, and we want to measure from where they intersect with this curly wire and that wire. That's the point where we're measuring, and we want to have it 1 centimeter long, and we'll snip it. What I usually do is I measure it because it's just easier this way to make adjustments, because you don't want it too short, you'll wreck your earrings. I actually cut it off a little bit long. And then trim it again. Oh, I should have hung on to that. Okay, so I can see that I'm about 2 centimeters too long. I'm going to snip that off by eyeballing it, because that's pretty easy to eyeball. Okay, so it should be bang on. Now 1 centimeter, and it is exactly 1 centimeter. Now I'm going to do the same thing for this one, and I'm holding it upside down just because I'm right-handed. And then so it's about 2 centimeters too long again, or 2 millimeters rather. Probably said 2 centimeters last time too. I'm trying not to sniffle here. I do have the sniffles right now. Okay, so they're both trimmed. And that's what they're like. They're looking good so far. Now doing the little spiral loops on the end. Actually, the top really isn't a spiral. We're just a loop and a bend. So I'm taking my chain nose pliers. Some people prefer using the tips of their round nose pliers. And I'm just making a little loop. I'm going to crimp that in. Okay, and now I'm gripping it, and I'm going to give it a bit of a little bit of a round arch there. And sometimes that takes practice to do. And I'm actually stretching the wire out a little bit because I want it to come around this bead. Not completely, but just so the bead shows through better. Okay, and I'm going to just crimp this loop in a tiny bit more. There. Okay, so that one's done. Now with this bottom one, we could do the same thing but reverse, or you could make it more of a spiral. So that would be your choice, and I usually do a tiny bit of a spiral. And it's harder to work with it here, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You see how it did that, and that's okay. And I'm going to go with that and then try and make something similar on the other one. And I'm just going to push that circle. So the circle did get a tiny bit tinier. Straighten out those beads. And I think that one is done. There we go. That one's done. And now, do the same thing for the other. So whatever we have on the other earring, we want to make it very similar. So I got it having a little bit of a swerve, pushing it, pulling it a little bit tighter to stretch around that bead. Now I already did move this down a little bit, which is okay, and that's what we want. Because I'm right-handed, I'm flipping it backwards to make my next little